Yep. We're seeing threats to religious freedom in America like never before, but there's an organization that is pushing back and winning like never before. We'll talk to the president of First Liberty Institute. Hi, I'm Stuart Shepard, and this is First Liberty Live. We are here in the middle of the exhibit hall at the NRB Christian Media Convention, and there's a lot of noise and activity around us, but we don't care. We just set up in the middle of it and said, we're going to do some live streaming from right here. Remember to like and share our videos. That's how we get our word out to other people. That's how we meet some new friends. But right now I want you to meet Kelly Shackelford. He's President, CEO, and Chief Counsel of First Liberty and my boss. Hi, Kelly.
Hey.
Good to see you. How are you enjoying the convention so far?
It's great. I've still got my voice despite a bunch of media interviews. And you still got your voice despite a number of interviews, so far so good.
We've been having a good time today. And you're on a panel today, tomorrow?
Yeah, the entire convention, they have a panel on religious liberty and just some of the stuff that's happening, and that's this afternoon. And then tomorrow we're putting on a workshop because these are all Christian organizations, and how do they protect themselves against the kind of attacks that are coming? So they asked us if we would do a workshop to help, prepare people for those type of things, so we're doing that tomorrow.
Let's talk about what's in the headlines. Just in the past week, we heard the news from the Supreme Court concerning a case out of Philadelphia involving foster care. Tell me about the case and the significance of it.
Very significant case. Number one, to get a 9-0 decision on religious freedom is a good thing. But this case was it was out of Philadelphia. You had Catholic Services, which places most of the children, more than any other group. And they decided in Philadelphia to come up with a new requirement that you basically had to sign that you agreed with same-sex marriage in order to place children. Well, of course, a Catholic organization is going to place children with a mom and a dad. And when they couldn't sign and say that they would do that, they were excluded. So, I mean, the place that's providing most of these children a home gets kicked out because of their religious beliefs. Went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said 9-0, you can't do that.
A couple of things about that. We filed a friend of the court brief to go with that, and it was an interesting person that we were representing it.
Yeah, this is an important case, and some of our friends did the case, but we wanted to make sure and really focus the court on not only this issue, but there's another big issue kind of looming that the court didn't get to. I don't want to get too far in the weeds with everybody, but the Smith decision,
right,
which has caused so much damage to religious freedom. And our Coach Kennedy case is like the case where the Supreme Court mentioned that they might be ready, once we come back, to tee up the Coach Kennedy case and take down this bad Smith decision from 35 years ago. If that were to happen, we would have really just a massive increase in protection for the free exercise of religion. So a lot of people are kind of bemoaning that they didn't do that in this case. We didn't really think they probably would, but we're hoping that the Coach Kennedy case is the case where that's going to happen. And Coach Kennedy's case is probably on its way to the Supreme Court in a number of months, and if so, we'll have our chance really soon.
When we saw that the decision came down 9-0, that tells you it's going to be narrow, because in order to get all 9 of them to agree, they're not going to do anything hugely life-changing, if you will. But it also struck some of us that it might be sending a bit of a signal from the court saying, don't mess with the number of chairs up here, we got this handled. Did you read that as well?
Yeah, I mean, this attempt at court packing is where you add justices to the Supreme Court, like take it from 9 to 13 or 15 or whatever, is something that this shows. Here's a big controversial case, and yet it was 9-0 on the opinion. So that was almost like a message. We don't need any more justices, okay? And I think the court is very aware, and it could impact their opinions. It reminds me also that we really need to defeat court packing in a major way, because we've got decisions at the Supreme Court coming up, and it could affect how the justices, how strong they are. Yeah. There's a big Second Amendment case. There's a big case on the sanctity of life and abortion. these big cases are up there. We don't want justices sort of moderating their decisions because they're worried that some big political attack on the court's about to occur. So I'm hoping that between now and the next term, when all these things are going to be decided, we can crush this whole idea of court packing, which is really dangerous, so that the court can be the court and the Constitution can be protected.
Now, the president kicked off 180 days for a commission to study this, and I guess that's underway. I mean, I think we kind of know what they're going to come back around with. But as you look at the arc of this, where are we in the process? Where are we in the way that this is going to play out?
Well, the president issued an executive order to reform the United States Supreme Court, which is pretty amazing to even use that kind of terminology. This committee is very unbalanced, as not unexpected. 36 members, 31 of them are pretty well-known, solid, if not extreme liberals, and then 5 who might not fit that category. So not exactly expecting a balanced approach, but many...
The token sort of conservative.
Exactly, and they're gonna come down with their recommendations in November. And we know that part of those recommendations they're considering are packing the United States Supreme Court. And the problem with that is it doesn't just tinker with the court, it destroys the court. Whenever you take the judiciary and you place it underneath the political branch, you've really lost the independent judiciary, you've lost the rule of law, you've really lost all your constitutional rights because you don't have any rights anymore. You have whatever rights the majority party wants you to keep because they can just add justices until they take it away. So it's a very dangerous thing. In other countries we found it's the end of the country as far as a free country. It's a development into tyranny that's almost immediate. And we tried this in the United States in 1937, and the people, when they were educated of how dangerous this was, they were averaging, this is 1937, they were averaging 1,000 letters a day arriving in senators' offices, and they stopped it. And so we've really focused everything we've got on this because this would destroy our courts. So what good does it do us to fight for religious freedom if our courts are gone?
We've got a website set up, supremecoup.com, supremecoup.com, and on there, when you first get to the page, it'll pop up a little screen on top, a little window on top of the page itself, where you can click through and take a poll. We're collecting opinions. They said they wanted to get opinions. We're going to collect opinions. We also have a major campaign, a major effort to try to push back on this. It involves advertising, the website, the poll, trying to reach through to influencers and all that. This is a big deal for First Liberty Institute.
We've never done anything like this before, but it calls for it. This is the first time in 83 years, 84 years, anything like this has been attempted in our country. It's very dangerous. So we have committed millions of dollars to getting the word out. If people are educated, they immediately begin to understand how bad this is. And so we've got to educate people. So Supreme Coup is a way people can do it. Go there, fill out the information, say there's an action center where they can take some action, educate their friends.
We've got shareable resources you can post on your social media.
And we're running ads all over the country, CNN, Fox, digital, podcasts, major podcasts like Dinesh D'Souza, everybody. We're running ads everywhere right now so that people understand. And what the great thing, we can put this, it doesn't matter if it's liberal or conservative, right? You got Ruth Bader Ginsburg saying this is a bad idea. So it's not just liberals, not just conservatives who think court packing's bad, liberals think it's bad too, but the danger is that the Democratic Party who's in charge are short-sighted and think, hey, let's grab the court. And in the process, they destroy the court. So the more people can be educated on both sides of the aisle, the more we can have happen what happened in 1937, where the people rose up and said, no, this cannot happen in this country, or else my children and my grandchildren will lose something invaluable.
For 150 years, it's been 9 on the Supreme Court. I think most Americans just kind of assumed that that's the number, that it's not changeable, but it really comes down to what Congress wants to do. The Constitution doesn't set a number. It says they can change it if they choose to, but they haven't since basically the Wright brothers flew the first airplane and Henry Ford built the first Model T.
Yeah, or we had the creation of the light bulb. I mean, that's the last time. And this is way back. All it takes to change the number of justices on the Supreme Court is a vote of Congress. So, and right now you've got one party that controls the presidency, the House, and the Senate. So this could happen, and this is what people don't realize. We are very close. We've got a commission. We've got a bill that's been filed to add 4 justices to the Supreme Court.
Yep.
We've got a lot of money behind this effort. Now people focus, they say, yeah, but if the filibuster holds, but of course that's just up to 1 or 2 senators.
Now let's talk about that. It's Kyrsten Sinema, senator, and also Joe Manchin. A lot of attention has been paid to him. Some are calling him the firewall, if you will, to prevent this from happening, because if one or both of them vote against the idea, then it's dead on arrival. It's not going to get out of the Senate. But here's a quote from Joe Manchin. He sounds tough. He says, "Do we really want to live in America where one party can dictate and demand everything and anything it wants whenever it wants? American democracy is something special. It's bigger than one party or the tweet-filled partisan attacks of the moment." So he's speaking like a statesman. We hope he stands strong, but he really needs to hear from people, doesn't he?
Absolutely. I was just talking to Senator Ted Cruz not too long ago. He said he's watched Manchin be strong on a lot of things, but in the end, he pretty much always goes with his party. And if he does that here, it means the filibuster is going to break, and we're going to have a disaster on our hands with regard to the courts. So he needs all the support he gets. So far, he's said the right things, but boy, people need to contact him, especially West Virginians. Same with Sinema in Arizona. But it's something that everybody can do something about, because really, again, if you look back to 1937, the Democrats had 80 out of the 100 seats in the Senate. And yet the president of their party was rebuffed, because when everybody got educated, even Democrats turned on their own president and said no. And that can happen now. We've just got to educate people, and everybody who's watching this can have a part in that. They can go to Supreme Coup. They can get some of these different tools and begin educating their people. They can encourage people to call their senators, to let the senators know. There's lots of things they can do to really educate people so that we preserve really the envy of the world. Our Supreme Court and our court system, I mean, the rule of law, I mean, when you lose that, you don't realize how valuable it is till you lose it. And that's not something we want to experience in this country.
So supremecoup.com is where you need to go for that.
If you don't know French, coup is C-O-U-P.
Hey, we want to get an update on what First Liberty is doing before I let you go. We just launched a case involving an organization called Christians Engaged and their little kerfuffle with the IRS. Tell me what happened there and why we're pushing back.
It's really an unbelievable case. The IRS denied Christian Engaged their tax-exempt status. And they just didn't deny it. They put in writing why. And what they said is that they're and by the way, what Christians Engage is a group that encourages their people to pray for their elected officials, to make sure they vote, to get involved, and to get educated on the issues, and to do so by biblical values and the Word of God. The IRS said in writing that the reason they denied their status was that they were aligned by biblical values and the Word of God, and that biblical values and the Word of God are more closely aligned with the Republican Party, and that therefore they couldn't get their tax-exempt status.
And we all go, wow, are you kidding me?
If that's the case, every church is about to have their tax-exempt status revoked. Every Christian organization, or at least the ones that say they're following biblical values or the Word of God, which is pretty much every one of them.
I would hope so.
They're now canceled as nonprofit organizations. I mean, this would be, there's a problem under the Obama administration with Lois Lerner abusing the IRS authority to attack and deny status and all this. This would be Lois Lerner on steroids. And so we immediately have appealed. I would encourage people, if they haven't You can read the IRS letter, you won't believe what you're reading.
It's crazy. I read through it, it's just nuts because it uses an alphabetical letter system to replace words in the letter. So it calls the Bible the inerrant M.
Yes. M. You can't say things like Word of God, so we use the word M. And so I just, we've appealed. We are hopeful that they will correct this, but if they don't, we're going to go into federal court, and I am very confident that Christian Engaged is going to get their tax exempt status. But if they don't, God forbid what's going to happen to our country with all the nonprofits across the country. So this is one for everybody to keep their eye on.
One other thing to talk about briefly, this week the members of the Supreme Court, the justices, are going to meet in private conference, and they're going to talk about a couple of our cases. Tell me about that.
Yeah, this is a special time. They meet in conference. It's just the 9 justices, nobody, not even a clerk in the room with them, and they vote on whether they're going to take cases. And in this case, it involves 2 pretty important cases we have sitting at the Supreme Court. One is a case out of Maine where they allow school choice for everybody to go to any school they want as long as it's not a religious school. Well, that's discriminatory. You can't do that. You can't say you can go to that school, that private school, but that you can't go to a religious school. So, and that'll have a huge impact on the entire country if we're able to get that up and get a victory. And most people think that there's a high likelihood they might take that case. The other is a case with the North American Mission Board, which is the board that's sort of above the Baptist churches. And in this case, what they do is they advise them, they work with them, they help them. You had a pastor in one situation who was removed from a church and then tried to apply to another church, and that church sought counsel with the North American Mission Board, and they said, there's some things you need to look at here because of what passed. Yeah. And that church decided not to hire the pastor. Well, that pastor sued, showing they're very Christian, yeah. Sued the North American Mission Board. Well, you can't do that. I mean, the courts, the secular courts, have no authority over who you pick as your religious leader, Baptist groups talking to one another. The courts can't be involved in that and say what's right and wrong. And so it's what's called church autonomy. And so our argument is the courts have no jurisdiction over this. And if they take this case, it could be a really important case for protecting the sanctity of the church, the sanctity of religious freedom, and really just church autonomy across the country.
I know you've got a busy schedule while you're here. Anything else you want to share before I let you go?
Just a lot of, I've been really encouraged. I think since February, we've had 9 cases come down, all victories. Yeah. Of course, I think a lot of people remember the 2 valedictorians we just represented. I love those stories. Those young ladies who stood up, and because of that, they stood up in front of all their peers and they talked about Jesus Christ in their graduation ceremony.
They put it on YouTube for everybody else to see.
Absolutely. People think, I don't have much hope for the future. They need to look at Elizabeth Turner, and they need to look at our clients and see these cases. But so we're having victory after victory after victory. It's just we're having to fight more. So I would encourage everybody else, stand up, stand for your faith, speak up. There's a lot of crazy stuff being said right now that everybody knows is not true. And somebody's got to stand up and say, that's not true. That's silly. And speak the truth and the Word of God, even if it's the M. We need to speak the truth of God. Yeah. They need to know when they do that, the law is behind them. We need that in our country. We're winning these cases. And really just thank you to everybody for being a part of all these victories. We know there's some huge battles about to come. But so far it's been a great year. We've had great success. And as long as we can keep the court packing away, I really feel very positive about the future with religious liberty.
Very good. Kelly Shackelford, thank you so much. Great chatting with you again.
Thank you, Stuart.
Hey, and if you're interested in taking that poll we were talking about, this survey, just go to supremecoup.com, that's C-O-U-P if you're not French, supremecoup.com. And when you get to the page, a pop-up will appear, a little window above the home page of the site. That's the thing you need to click on to get to the poll. There's a red button at the bottom of that. We'd appreciate your input, and we're going to be sharing that as we go forward, so that since they asked for input, we want to give them some input, and your input is welcome. So again, it's supremecoup.com. We're going to be live for the rest of the week here at NRB, the Christian Media Convention, Thank you for sharing with us this week. We hope you're being inspired and encouraged by the messages that we're sharing, and we will have more for you tomorrow. Thanks again, Kelly.
Thank you.